Earl Isbill served in the Transportation Corps of the U.S. Army during World War II. He received medals for serving in both the European and Pacific theaters.
Thank you for coming. You may decline to answer any questions you are not comfortable with, and if at any point you want us to stop recording, please let us know.
Okay.
During World War II, which branch of service did you serve in?
Army.
What was your rank?
Oh, it's PFCs. I got in private first class.
Okay. Where did you serve?
Well, I was in the Transportation Corps, and been all over, but I was never in any one place very long. I took my training over in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, then went out to Fort Riley, Kansas, and then from there went on up to another camp in Oregon. Then I went to Vancouver Barracks in Washington, which is just across the river from Portland, Oregon. And it started over to Japan, Hiroshima, and but I was a cook and mess sergeant, and a lot of the older people had got discharged, the ones that had enough points, so they was short of cooks. So they took me off of that thing and put me there because that was a port of embarkation and debarkation. So they bringing our troops back, and then we took them from there to separation centers down in Texas and Arkansas and another place I don't remember, in Colorado. I forgot the name of that. And then after that, I was on rode those troop trains for about 4 months. They needed on a troop ship, so they put me on it and went up to Stockton, California, just up the river there from in San Francisco, and got 1,000 German prisoners, and then went back down to on the coast of Mexico and all down through there to the Panama Canal, and got to go through that and see it, which was a big thing for a country boy. And then we went on up through the Caribbean Sea and got up to in England. We took those the German prisoners. They said they was going to work them in the coal mines in England. So we unloaded them. And then a couple of days later, we went down to La Havre, France, picked up our troops, 1,200 of them, brought them back to New York. So stayed on, they decommissioned the ship at that time. And so we stayed on the ship for about 6 weeks. The longshoremen came on and took off all the equipment. All we had to do was watch them and see that no one came on the ship, stole anything. And then the rest of the time we got to do what we wanted to there in New York City. So I saw all I wanted to see in New York. Then they sent me to Brooklyn Army Base for a few days. And then from there, sent me to Camp Killer, New Jersey. And that was another debarkation and embarkation. With that, up there, the ships come in, maybe have 4,200 people, 3,800, or 2,000, whatever. And so we had to feed them a huge steak dinner when they first came in. So I stayed there about 4 or 5 months, something like that. I came home on a furlough, and when I went back, they didn't need me there, but they needed me over at the wax detachment. So the last 6 weeks I worked in the Army and cooked. I worked over for about 2,000 wax. That's when I had fun. That's 6 weeks. And oh, the WAC, I'm sorry, it's a Women's Army Corps. And I'm sorry, I forgot who I was talking about, who. But anyway, there was about 2,000 of those women, and a lot of them was good looking. And I wasn't married as a young man, so I enjoyed that last 6 weeks. I hate to get discharged. Then they sent me back down to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where I started for the separation center. And that's about the story. But I'll tell you one thing, I got a medal and a ribbon for serving in the Pacific Theater, just because I rode that ship from Portland, Oregon, down through the Panama Canal. Then we got on over there in Europe. I got another ribbon for serving in the European theater. So I looked like I had a lot of service and a lot of time, and I never told anybody that it didn't happen about six weeks. It took me to earn those 2 ribbons. So I guess that's about all to answer your first question. The next answers won't be that long.
All right. Why did you pick the service branch you joined?
Well, I was drafted, and they said, you're going to serve in the Army.
Where did you do your basic training?
In Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
What do you remember most about basic training?
Those 25-mile hikes. When I first went in there, I was in an instrument and survey battery, and I wasn't really interested in carrying all that surveying equipment around, and I wanted to be a chef someday. So I wrote the battalion commander a letter and told him how much better I could serve the country if I was in the food service. So it didn't take them long. They said, "About somebody's crazy here. Let's make him a cook." So, and then I had to take a 25-mile hike. That was one of the main things done after 6 weeks. Well, when I went into cook and baker school and I had to start over. I had a new class starting. I had to go through all that basic training and that other 25-mile hike again. So that's about the most I'll remember about it.
Where did you go first after basic training?
First went to, I had a delay en route, and I came home for a couple of weeks, and I went up to, that's where I went to Fort Riley, Kansas then.
Tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences.
Well, I've already told you about when I was there cooking for the wax. But it was fun for me and educational for me to ride those troop trains and the ship and I had a lot of fun. I never got in any trouble. I never caused them any trouble that they caught me at. But it was, I like to travel, and there's opportunities. Like I said to begin with, I didn't stay in any one place very long, 3 or 4 months at most. So I don't know of any.
How did you stay in touch with your family?
Oh, I called them on the phone, wrote letters about 3 times a week, letter, and then I'd call them about once a month. I have to call them and give them a new address. I was at another place, so that. But that wasn't. It wasn't anything. I enjoyed calling. I could hear at that time, they had telephone operators every city. So if I was calling from Vancouver, Washington, I'd hear that they'd answer, and operator would answer in California. And then I'd hear it going all the way across the country. They'd answer there in Kansas, answer another place, finally get to Knoxville. Then I'd get to ring my parents' number. So that I always enjoyed listening to that.
What kinds of food did you cook?
Everything. That was, we had I can tell you this, when the ship came in with the troops on it, we gave them a big steak dinner. Had mashed potatoes and green beans and corn, and all the milk they wanted to drink, and all the ice cream they wanted to eat, and rolls and salad, and it's a big meal. So, and I cooked breakfast as a breakfast cook there. What we'd done, we'd go in most of the time about 11 o'clock a day and help serve the noon meal. Then we'd work until we got through that night, and then come back the next morning at 4:30 and work until through the noon meal. So I cooked all the foods, but the main thing I cooked was the meats, because we had coal ranges. Had 10 coal ranges, 5 of them back to back, and it wasn't a fancy grill like they have now. We had a cast iron grill that laid over the stove, and it'd stand there 4 or 5 hours at a time frying steaks.
On a typical day, how many men did you have to feed?
Well, it's sometimes they get shipped out, we wouldn't have but 200 people. Maybe that was cattery there in for the thing. But whatever men was on the ship, if a ship came in with 4,000 people, of course we had that. And what they try to do is get the ones out before another big group came in. So they run in orphan. Because they brought, now over in the West Coast, they brought those small ships, or in that smaller debarkation places. But there at Camp Kilmer, that was a large place. So we feed 4,800 or 5,000 at a time.
What size crew of in your? I guess how many men were you working with in the?
Okay. And that size mess hall, we had a dishwashing machine, or trays, fed, and the silverware and the cups and all. It took 25 people to operate that machine and carry the dirty trays into the machine, running through it, and carry the clean trays back out. So there was 25. We had German prisoners, and there was 25 German prisoners assigned to that, for that maze. And then they had about 20, I guess, just regular KPs. But then there was about 40 of us in one barracks there, and they had them divided up into 2 shifts, so there's 20 of us at a time on a shift. Of course, that included one fellow that had big walk-in coolers and freezers, and one person was in charge of all of that. And they were, at that time, in making the French fries, they had to peel the potatoes by hand. Well, they had a potato peeler run around and got them off, but then had to take one of those, I know you've seen them, I don't know, you might not have noticed, but the thing to make the French fries, it was up on the wall, put the potato there and pull it down. Had about 3 of those, and they just stand there, and we fed 500 pounds of potatoes, and then fry them. And then they'd make up salad. It'd be about 5 cases of lettuce at a time, plus the peppers and carrots and things, vegetable salad. So it was a big operation. And when I first put there, they assigned me as a dining room orderly. Had to keep everything moving there and put the food out as we needed. But we had the coffee urns. We had 2 30-gallon coffee urns on each end of they'd come down the center and they'd go down the serving lines. And we'd make a 60-gallon of coffee on each end. And then when the thing's hooked up, it's just like a looked kind of like a train with a steam engine in the center. They had that 100-gallon hot water tank that heated the water. And if when we ran out of coffee, we opened up the valves and pumped the coffee from this one over to here where the men could serve out of it. And then we'd make we'd make 90 gallons of coffee on each end of the thing every meal practically, when we had a full. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes, you probably heard, the lines would be so long and that they would get through eating breakfast and come back and get in line for lunch. Because they didn't have anything to do. They were just there. Sometimes they'd have to take a physical because they're just waiting to be discharged and are sent to another separation center. So it was a big operation in those large mess halls.
So if you were cooking and the line was really long, when would you eat?
After everybody else ate, or either before I ate this, so whenever we could. If breakfast was over, and we got the line set up for lunch and it wasn't time to start serving, we'd eat. But if we didn't get all of that work done and all that set up and it's time to start serving, then we ate after. Like, we'd serve lunch probably from about 11 to 2, and then we'd eat after that. If we wasn't too tired, sometime we'd head for the barracks, get a shower and get some sleep.
Tell me about your close friendships while you were in the service.
Well, I really didn't have any close friendships because I didn't stay there in that transportation corps, and we was all just moving around. But there's one guy that's in basic. He was a coach from down at Dalton, Georgia, and he and I, the beds was side by side, and we was always pulling tricks on each other. And every Saturday morning we had to lay our beds out, make them up real tight, and put all of our shoes and extra clothes, and all the clothes had to be hung up for inspection. So one guy, then we had 2 pairs of shoes, and we'd have to put them out, put one shoe sitting up straight, and the other one turned up so the sole would show, so the inspectors could check and see if they wasn't worn out, and that they were shined. And this guy, his name was Vickers, that's the last, I don't remember his first name, but he and I was as close, I guess, as yet. But one day for inspection, he was smoking a cigar, or what it wasn't smoking, he had it in his mouth. Had been smoking and chewing on it. So he got up there and he still had it, and I told him, I said, Vic, they're downstairs inspecting now. The colonel's down there, and he's going to be up here in a minute. So well, you better do something with that cigar. He said, oh, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. So he didn't have the cigar when he came for inspection. I didn't know what happened to it. But then when they started putting their clothes away, I found that cigar butt in my shoe. He put it in there. So it was that kind of things we was always doing to each other. And he was the only one really that I could call a friend that I knew something about, because he'd tell me about his family. Now when I was on the ship, those German prisoners, they assigned a fella as my translator, and he taught English in school there, in high school in Germany. And he had a couple little girls, and he'd show me their pictures and all. And so he and I was together all the time, because everything I wanted to say to a group of people, I had to tell him, and he'd tell them. So I enjoyed knowing him, and he told me a lot about Germany that I wouldn't have known otherwise. So I guess he could be classified as a friend of a short period of time.
What did you go on to do as a career after the war?
Well, I went to school there. And, first I went over to university and in the School of Home Economics, and that was another place I had a lot of fun. It was me and one other little boy in that school, 900 girls. So, but the main thing I wanted to learn about food and nutrition, and also I went a couple of years to school. Then, well, when I first came back in the Army, I was working at Alcoa when I left, and so I went back to work there for a little while, and I said, no, this is not any good. I didn't like to do that kind of work. I had a good job there in the machine shop, but I didn't like to do that work, so I went, then I went up Gatlinburg, worked up there during the summers, a couple of summers. Worked over the hospital as a cook one winter when I came back, worked in Oak Ridge as a cook. So then this fellow worked at Sears told me, said, why don't you go over to Sears and get you a job? So I had my clothes all ready in the car and was going up to Gatlinburg to get me a room for that summer. And I went by Sears to fill out an application, just have something to do. Excuse me. So they hired me as a salesman, and I worked for them a while, maybe 9 or 10 months. Then I left, and I was working in Oak Ridge that winter. Then, after they closed, at that time everything in Gatlinburg closed after Labor Day and didn't open again until next Memorial Day. And, so I was working over there, and the credit manager called and left a note, and I called him back, and he said, I've got a job I'd like to have you on. So, well, I was off until Thursday, I believe. I'd come over and talk to him. So I went to work in the credit department collecting delinquent accounts, and I've done that for 12 years. And I run into some experiences there that some good, some bad. But anyway, then I went to work, the manager of the restaurant there quit, so I got that job. Done that for 12 years. Then they sold out the restaurant, and so then I was just a department manager there for about three years. And then they consolidated a lot of departments. And I told him if he told the store manager, if I had to take any more departments, had 3, then I didn't want to be a manager anymore. So I went back as a salesman. And so then I worked all the time in some restaurant someplace. During the World's Fair, worked up at there at Winnebago Village. I don't know, of course, I know you don't, I don't know whether you know about that or not. Worked there on the weekends, holidays, vacations during the World's Fair, and met a lot of people there from students. They came, a lot of people would come for, in high school bands and college bands, or they was coming to entertain for the fair. They stayed up there. And so I've had 2 or 3 careers all mixed up together.
Very soon. Okay. Is there anything you'd like to add that we haven't covered in this interview?
No. Well, I could go on for the rest of the day about the stuff that I've done that was interesting to me, but it might not be interesting to other people. And, but really, I don't know much more. And of course, I ended up my career working down to Walmart after I retired from over at Sears. Worked down there for 13 years as a greeter. And so that was a lot of fun at times. And sometimes, a lot of times it's aggravating, but that's about, I guess that's all I can tell you, need to tell you.
Well, thank you for your time, and appreciate you coming out, and thank you for serving your country.
Well, I didn't, like I told this young fellow that a while ago, I didn't get in any combat, but I went where and when they told me to go. And of course, the war was over just a few months after I got in. I didn't get in 45 when I was drafted. But what I did had to be done. The troops had to be fed, and I was glad to. I always felt like I was the most important person on the base because I was the mess sergeant.
Everybody that served had a role to play.
Yeah.
And it's all important.
Well, that's true.
Well, thank you so much.
Well,
You really
I hope I haven't bored you too much.
Oh, not at all.